Who is Jimmy Stewart? Jimmy was born May 20th, 1908. He had a humble childhood in Indiana, Pennsylvania, where he tried acting. He began his career in earnest after graduating from Princeton in 1932. He went on Broadway and joined summer stock productions. His first official film roles were in 1935, The Murder Man, and 1938, He Can't Take It With You. 1939's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington shot him to fame with his first Academy Award nomination. He continued to soar after that with other hits, such as The Philadelphia Story. He joined the Air Force during World War II and was a successful pilot. His first role post-war was perhaps his best known, It's a Wonderful Life. It became a holiday classic after only modest box office success. He had developed a morally upright persona, but tried more serious parts after that, such as 1948's Rope and 1954's Rear Window. He also tried comedies like Harvey and westerns like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Nothing could keep him down, yet something was missing: finding true love and making a family. Jimmy was a surprisingly shy actor, considering the man he was. His MGM boss, Louis B. Mayer, was worried he might be gay when he didn't start romancing his co-stars, so they started setting him up on dates eventually. The things that made Jimmy Stewart a box office draw also made him a ladies' man in his earlier years. His war history, handsome but approachable looks, and unique voice made ladies take notice. He was dubbed the Great American Bachelor. In the 1940s, Jimmy was connected to many women, including Olivia de Havilland, Ginger Rogers, Loretta Young, Norma Shear, Dinah Shore, and Marlene Dietrich. These relationships differed in seriousness, but none were the one. Then one day, he met Gloria McLean. She was a socialite, actress and model. They met at a dinner party, and he admits it was love at first sight. That didn't make it an obvious match though. She was divorced and had 2 sons from a previous marriage, Michael and Ronald. Jimmy married Gloria in 1949, when he was 41. He shocked the world and made headlines. Gloria admitted about a year later that she'd been worried about marrying such a famous bachelor. She was worried he wouldn't like seeing her sons from a previous marriage all day every day. Her fears were unfounded. They had a picnic on the beach on his first day off. After the wedding, she said he made everything into an occasion and was, quote, a great hit with the boys. They had their own children in 1951. Twin daughters, Kelly and Judy. Seemed he'd finally found a woman to settle down with and start a family. His death and legacy. Jimmy's career continued until 1991, when he recorded his lines for the animated movie 5-0 Goes West. He also appeared in a few talking head documentaries. In the 90s, the death of his wife seemed like the right time to retire. His health was already declining. He had to use a hearing aid, survived a bout of skin cancer, and had heart problems. Jimmy died at age 89 on July 2, 1997. He suffered an embolism that lodged a blood clot in his lungs. Over 3,000 mourners attended his service, which included full military honors. President Clinton said the world had lost a national treasure. Who is Jimmy's daughter? Jimmy was married to his true love, Gloria, for 45 years. They had 2 sons, one of whom was tragically killed in Vietnam. They also had twin daughters. None of them had any interest in acting, including his daughter Kelly. She instead became an anthropologist, living with her husband, Alexander Harcourt, and teaching at UC Davis. Her parents were interested in conservation, and her mother read books about it that she received in high school. She feels her father would be relieved she never got into film. Kelly remembers going on the set with him as a little girl. She thought that everyone fussing over him for hair and makeup didn't look like the kind of thing she could do. She also remembers that his preparations for roles would sometimes continue at home. He would sit in his special chair at home, looking over new scripts. He'd never speak his lines out loud, but you could see his lips moving as he go over them in his head. She still remembers that image. It's the image well. If none of the children ever participated, that was the only way he brought his work home. But she always thought that, quote, Hollywood was out when he came through the door. It helped her feel loved and noticed in a way that many actors, children don't. What Jimmy's daughter had to say. Kelly doesn't consider Jimmy a traditional father or hands-on dad. He wasn't the type to help with homework or change diapers, but his life was his example of how to behave. She said her father's massive career never gave him a massive ego. His respectable, all-American attitude wasn't an act. He was gracious with fans. He never refused an autograph. Fans would tell him about writing a letter in high school and getting a personal response back. His secretary had to help him in the later years, but he always signed them. His distinctive draw was also real. It showed up when he would tell them stories about his life, which she loved, even when it took a while to get to the point. She does remember one moment when the light in his eyes began to dim. That was when his wife, Gloria, died in '94. She remembers they were both wonderful parents. They had a similar sense of humor that worked well with each other and were never the disciplinary type. She says that when he lost her, it seemed like he'd, quote, had enough of the world. He wasn't depressed per se, but would spend most of his time in bed with his two dogs. At the same time, she does believe he knew he was loved and appreciated his wonderful life. Kelly believes the movie, It's a Wonderful Life, remains relevant today. It encourages those who dream of traveling. It also lets everyone know how important it is to make their life mean something to the ones they love. She's grateful to those who made it a part of their holiday traditions and considers that a gift to their family. She also believes it was one of her father's favorite projects. He loved working with director Frank Capra, whom he worked with several times again. Another thing he was most proud of was his military service. It took a toll on him, leaving him with nightmares of bombers. It was Frank who helped convince him that he could come back to film after so much time away. Kelly also remembers Jimmy as a doting grandfather. She and her brother's children all have fond memories of their grandparents and how much they made their lives better. Acting wasn't even his only passion. Jimmy was an accomplished pilot with over 400 flight hours by the end of the '30s. He flew more than 20 combat missions by the end of his service in the Air Force. He also starred in a biopic of Charles Lindbergh and was inducted into the Aviation Hall of Fame in 2009. Jimmy was also a poet. If the improvised crying scene and It's a Wonderful Life didn't make you cry. His story about his dog Will. He appeared on Johnny Carson's The Tonight Show several times. His piece Bow, which he read in 1981, had everyone, including the host, holding back tears. There's also a collected version of his works called Jimmy Stewart and His Poems, and it's sold over 300,000 copies. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite Jimmy Stewart film? Let us know in the comment section below.